My 44 former companions are currently hunting me down with lethal intent. The ridiculous part? I sacrificed my own humanity to pull every single one of them out of the abyssal labyrinth. My grand reward is a royal bounty on my head and an army of brainwashed assassins. How did the ultimate savior become public enemy number one overnight? Let us rewind to the moment my heroic life violently derailed. I am currently pinned behind a crumbling marble pillar, breathing in the thick, suffocating dust of a ruined sanctuary. A silver-tipped arrow shatters the ancient stone mere inches from my nose, spraying rock shards into my eyes. Who shoots silver arrows with pinpoint accuracy at a distance of 300 yards in near darkness? Ilara, the elite elven archer I personally carried on my bleeding back through the venomous swamps of Kale. I patch her mortal wounds, give her my last rations, and she repays me by trying to put a broadhead straight through my skull. Is this what normal people call a toxic relationship? End quote. Come out, traitor, end quote. Ilara and Appo's voice echoes through the cavern, entirely devoid of her usual melodic warmth. End quote. The Holy Emperor has decreed your swift and absolute death. End quote. The Holy Emperor? I do not even know the man. I spent the last 3 grueling years trapped inside a high-level death dungeon, fighting grotesque shadow beasts just to survive. I checked my dusty inventory pouch to assess my tactical options. I have 3 standard smoke bombs, half a diluted health potion that smells like old cheese, and a grappling hook made from cheap wyvern sinew. I am severely under-equipped for a royal execution. End quote. Ilara, listen to me, end quote. I shout loudly, risking a quick glance around the jagged edge of the pillar. End quote. You are not thinking straight right now. Remember the dark swamps? Remember who sucked the lethal manticore poison out of your leg? End quote. Another arrow violently grazes my left cheek, drawing a thin line of fresh blood. She is absolutely not listening. End quote. Do not speak to me of your filthy lies, demon. End quote. She screams, rapidly knocking 3 arrows onto her glowing bowstring at once. She is entirely brainwashed. The terrifying glassy look in her emerald eyes tells me everything I need to know about this situation. Reasoning with an elite elven sniper who cannot control her own brain is mathematically impossible. I desperately need a solid distraction before she turns me into a porcupine. I pull the rusty metal pin on a smoke bomb. What is the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen? I throw the smoke bomb far to the left and dive hard to the right. The explosion is deafening, a thick, billowing cloud of purple ash rapidly filling the entire sanctuary. I do not run away toward the cavern exit like a sane person. I run straight toward her. It is an objectively terrible battle plan, but terrible battle plans are my established specialty. Ilara fires blindly into the expanding purple smoke. I hear the terrifying whistling of certain death passing a millimeter over my left shoulder. I slide aggressively across the polished marble floor, swinging my leg to kick her boots out from under her. She falls heavily, her armor clattering against the stone, but her combat reflexes are absolutely terrifying. Before her back even hits the ground, she draws a gleaming mithril dagger from her boot and slashes directly at my exposed throat. I lean back sharply, the razor-sharp blade slicing off a long lock of my black hair. I really like that hair. End quote. Die, imperial filth. End quote. She snarls, twisting her lithe body to pin me down against the cold floor. I grab her slender wrist, twisting it just enough to forcefully disarm her without breaking the fragile bone. I do not want to hurt her. She is a helpless victim here, acting against her own will. But I also do not want a severely stabbed jugular vein. I press my heavy knee into her chest armor, pinning her securely to the ground. End quote. Snap out of it immediately. End quote. I command, slapping her pale cheek lightly to wake her up. End quote. For the glorious empire. End quote. She chants mindlessly, her eyes rolling back into her head as a glowing purple magical crest suddenly appears on her smooth forehead. A mind control seal. A phenomenally high-tier one. This is not a simple street illusion. This is advanced, imperial-grade psychological warfare. Who has the vast resources and magical power to cast this on a master-level archer? I carefully observe the glowing rune. It pulses with vile dark mana, the kind that burns the retinas if stared at for too long. I trace a complex counter-rune in the damp air with my bloodied finger. End quote. I am going to forcefully purify you, end quote. I say calmly, gathering my scarce remaining energy. End quote. This is going to sting quite a bit, end quote. End quote. You cannot break the Emperor and Appo's iron will, end quote. She spits, struggling violently beneath my grip like a captured wildcat. I slam my glowing palm forcefully onto her forehead. The horrible sound of sizzling bacon fills the damp air, accompanied by her agonizing, ear-piercing shriek. The dark mana shatters like fragile glass beneath my hand, dispersing into harmless black smoke. For a brief moment, her eyes clear completely. The violent hostility fades, quickly replaced by sheer, unadulterated panic. End quote. What is happening? End quote. Alara gasps weakly, coughing violently as she looks wildly around the room. End quote. Why are we in the old abandoned sanctuary? Where are the others? End quote. End quote. You were actively trying to assassinate me. End quote. I say, stepping back cautiously and tossing her my half-empty healing potion. End quote. Someone put a nasty mind control seal on you. As for the others, end quote. Before she can even process the horrifying answer, the solid ground trembles violently beneath our boots. The massive reinforced oak doors of the sanctuary explode inward with a deafening crash, sending sharp wooden splinters flying everywhere like deadly shrapnel. Through the settling dust steps a towering figure clad in heavy, gleaming platinum armor, wielding a massive enchanted warhammer the size of a small farm horse. The metal is etched with holy scriptures that now pulse with a corrupted, ominous violet light. It is Valera, the unstoppable heavy paladin I once shielded from a devastating dragon and Appo's breath attack. End quote. Target localized successfully. End quote. Valera and Appo's voice booms loudly, entirely mechanical and hollow, lacking any trace of her former righteous zeal. End quote. Initiating immediate eradication protocol. End quote. Did she just say eradication protocol? Since when do holy paladins sound like heartless murder robots? I look past Valera and Appo's massive armored frame and my blood runs instantly cold. Behind her, stepping ominously through the ruined doorway, are 5 more heavily armed women. A furious fire mage whose hands are already sparking, a dual-blade shadowy assassin fading in and out of visibility, a wild beast tamer accompanied by a snarling direwolf, a serene holy cleric, and a dark necromancer dragging a skeletal minion. All of them bear the exact same glowing purple crest on their foreheads. All of them have their lethal weapons drawn and pointed directly at my chest. Let us do a quick mental head count and assess the immediate tactical situation. 7 elite fighters, completely brainwashed to the gills, versus 1 exhausted man who just woke up from a grueling dungeon crawl. The odds are not merely bad, they are hilariously catastrophic. I do not even have my primary magical sword. I left it with the town blacksmith for routine polishing yesterday. End quote. Valera, put down the giant hammer. End quote. I say loudly, slowly backing away toward the shattered marble altar. End quote. We do not need to do this. We shared our last meager rations in the freezing northern tundra. End quote. End quote. The Emperor and Appo's divine justice is absolute and unforgiving. End quote. Valera drones loudly, raising the massive weapon high above her helmeted head. The heavy steel crackles with blinding, chaotic divine lightning, illuminating the dark sanctuary with a sickly blue hue. She does not hesitate or show a single flicker of mercy. She swings it down with apocalyptic force. I dive recklessly behind the marble altar just as the colossal hammer completely obliterates the stone floor where I stood seconds ago. Heavy chunks of sharp rock rain down heavily on my shoulders, bruising my tired back. The holy cleric immediately casts a fast binding spell, causing glowing golden chains to violently erupt from the shattered ground and wrap tightly around my ankles. I am completely trapped, anchored to the floor. The fire mage begins chanting loudly in an ancient, forbidden dialect. She looks entirely terrified, caught helplessly between her shattered returning memories and the residual trauma of the invasive mind control. I cannot possibly fight 7 elite warriors at once in this compromised state. I absolutely refuse to kill the very people I shed my own blood to protect and nurture. I have exactly 4 seconds before I am roasted alive by the corrupted fire mage. I reach deep into my leather pouch, my fingers brushing against the cold, smooth glass of a rare emergency teleportation crystal. I only have one left. If I use it to save myself right now, I am leaving a defenseless Alara behind to be recaptured, rebrainwashed, or simply executed by her former comrades. What kind of supposed savior abandons his trusted comrade to die, again? The scorching heat of the corrupted fire mage and Apos' spell is currently singeing the dark hairs on my arms. I hold the incredibly rare emergency teleportation crystal tightly in my sweaty right palm. Leaving Alara behind is objectively the smartest tactical move a seasoned survivor could make. The logical part of my brain is screaming at me to crush the gem and vanish to a sunny beach in the southern colonies. So, why do I immediately sprint headfirst toward the very elf who just tried to put an arrow through my skull? Because apparently, chronic martyrdom is an incurable disease, and I am the most deeply infected patient in the entire imperial realm. The holy cleric and Apos' glowing golden chains still bind my ankles securely to the crumbling marble floor, severely restricting my movement. I dive forward anyway, stretching my aching body to the absolute physical limit, and violently grab Alara by her heavy mithril collar. The swirling miniature sun leaves the fire mage and Apos' sparked hands, roaring through the air with a terrifying hiss. It is mathematically impossible to dodge an area of effect spell of this massive magnitude. I crush the smooth, cool glass of the teleportation crystal in my fist, forcefully injecting my chaotic mana into the jagged shards. Spatial magic requires absolute precision, perfect visualization, and extreme emotional calm. I currently have exactly none of those things. End quote. Hold your breath immediately. End quote. I shout desperately over the deafening roar of the incoming flames. End quote. I and Apos' am already holding it, you utter idiot. End quote. Alara coughs violently, clutching my armored arm as if her life depends on it. Which it does. The world violently twists into a nauseating kaleidoscope of blinding blue light and crushing pressure. Spatial displacement is supposed to instantly transport the user to the nearest designated safe zone, usually a verified sanctuary or a cozy tavern. However, the holy binding chains anchored to the floor heavily interfere with the complex teleportation matrix. The magical coordinates get hopelessly tangled. Instead of appearing 50 miles away, the universe forcefully spits us out exactly 60 feet straight up. We are violently deposited onto the dusty, rotting wooden rafters near the vaulted ceiling of the very same ruined sanctuary. Did I happen to mention that I am deeply, irrationally terrified of heights? I absolutely am. The massive magical fireball detonates directly below us, completely vaporizing the ancient marble altar and sending a terrifying shockwave of blistering heat upward. The thick wooden beams beneath us groan in severe protest under our sudden, combined weight. We are technically alive, but we are effectively trapped on a highly flammable, crumbling perch. This is the exact opposite of a brilliant escape plan. It is a brilliant way to become smoke jerky. End quote. You wasted a master tier displacement crystal just to jump 50 feet in the air. End quote. Alara whispers furiously, peering cautiously over the edge of the splintering beam. Her emerald eyes are wide with utter disbelief and renewed panic. End quote. I successfully saved us from becoming crispy imperial barbecue. End quote. I reply defensively, rubbing my severely bruised ribs where the stone chunks had hit me earlier. End quote. You are extremely welcome, by the way. A simple and Apos', thank you and Apos', would suffice. End quote. My brief moment of smug satisfaction evaporates instantly, replaced by a cold dread. A low, guttural, bone-chilling growl echoes from the heavy shadows below. The beast tamer and Apos' massive direwolf is pacing aggressively around the smoking, glowing crater. Its glowing crimson eyes are locked entirely on our elevated position. Wolves are not supposed to look up, are they? Clearly, this particular magical, genetically enhanced wolf did not read the standard biological rulebook. End quote. Target location confirmed. Vertical elevation detected. Initiating pursuit. End quote. A cold, entirely mechanical voice echoes from the darkness above the rafters. It is Nyx, the dual-blade shadowy assassin. She is no longer standing with the heavily armed group on the ground floor. She is up here. With us. I frantically scan the thick, suffocating shadows clinging to the upper stone pillars. Where is she hiding? I reach into my dusty leather pouch and quickly pull out the grappling hook made from cheap wyvern sinew. It is an objectively terrible weapon for close-quarters combat, but I am entirely out of better options. A subtle, almost imperceptible displacement of dust behind my left shoulder is my only warning. I duck instinctively, throwing my weight forward. Two razor-sharp obsidian daggers slice silently through the empty space where my neck was a mere fraction of a second ago. Nyx materializes smoothly from the very shadows of the wooden rafter, her dead eyes glowing with that same sickly, pulsating purple crest. She does not hesitate for a microsecond. She lunges forward, her dark blades moving like a violent, unpredictable hurricane. I parry desperately with the heavy iron metal hook of my cheap grappling rope. Sparks fly wildly into the dark space as cheap iron violently meets master-crafted obsidian. She pivots gracefully and kicks me squarely in the chest, sending me sliding backward along the narrow, creaking beam. My boots scramble for purchase on the rotting wood. Why did I spend 3 years saving the most lethal, highly trained assassins in the continent? Why could I not just save regular bakers, tailors, and perhaps a friendly librarian? End quote. For the glorious empire, end quote. Nyx whispers monotonously, raising both daggers high to deliver the final, lethal strike. End quote. Alara, do it now, end quote. I yell at the top of my lungs, dropping my makeshift weapon completely to leave my hands free. Nyx blinks in momentary confusion, completely unprepared for a coordinated tactical counterattack from a supposedly helpless victim. Alara, having rapidly recovered just enough of her latent elven strength, swings her heavy, metal-plated leather boot directly into the back of Nyx and Appo's exposed knee. The elite assassin stumbles forward, violently losing her precarious balance on the incredibly narrow beam. I do not let this golden opportunity slip away. I grab Nyx tightly by her armored shoulders, using her own forward momentum to flip her violently over my head. I slam her hard against the thick wooden rafter. She grunts loudly, dropping her expensive obsidian daggers into the fiery abyss far below. I immediately pin her struggling, lithe form down, my tired eyes locking intensely onto the glowing purple crest on her smooth forehead. But something is horribly, disturbingly wrong. The magical rune is not just glowing with dark mana, it is actively pulsating, shifting its grotesque shape like a living, breathing creature trapped directly under her pale skin. A dark, metallic insectoid leg suddenly protrudes from the very center of the magical symbol, twitching frantically. End quote. By the merciful old gods, end quote. Alara gasps in pure horror, crawling closer along the beam. End quote. Is that a physical parasite? End quote. End quote. It is a royal neuroleech. End quote. I say, my stomach violently churning at the truly horrific sight. End quote. The advanced mind control magic is just a clever camouflage for a physical imperial parasite. They are literally eating her memories and replacing her thoughts. End quote. If I forcefully shatter the magic with raw mana like I did with Alara, the terrified parasite will likely burrow much deeper into her delicate brain tissue out of sheer survival instinct. I desperately need a delicate, unconventional solution. I hastily pull out my half-empty, terribly pungent health potion. Standard healing potions drastically accelerate cellular growth. If I pour it directly onto the mechanical parasite, it might rapidly overgrow its fragile magical shell and forcefully detach itself from its host. Is this an insane, completely unproven, highly dangerous medical theory? Yes. Am I going to do it anyway because I have exactly zero other options? Absolutely. I aggressively uncork the glass vial and splash the false. It violently detaches from Nyx's and Appo's forehead in a spray of black fluid, thrashing its many sharp metallic legs in the air. I stomp heavily on the mechanical abomination with my reinforced steel boot, crushing it completely into useless, sparking silver dust. Nyx goes entirely limp beneath my hands, gasping greedily for breath as the sinister purple glow finally fades from her eyes. 2 friends saved, 42 more heavily armed women to go. This is shaping up to be an exceptionally long and painful week. End quote. Status report. End quote. Nyx groans weakly, holding her bleeding, throbbing head. End quote. Why does everything in this room smell exactly like expired dairy? End quote. Before I can even begin to explain our dire, highly elevated situation, a sickening, thunderous crack echoes through the vast sanctuary. The corrupted fire mage waiting below is clearly not finished with us. She hurls a second, much more concentrated fireball directly at the central wooden pillar supporting our specific section of the rafter. The ancient dry wood instantly catches fire, splintering violently under the intense, unnatural magical heat. The massive beam beneath our boots suddenly tilts at a terrifying 45-degree angle. Gravity takes immediate and merciless control of our bodies. We slide uncontrollably toward the jagged edge. I grab the heavy wyvern sinew rope, wrapping it frantically around the massive protruding iron nail embedded in the surviving crossbeam. Alara desperately catches Nyx and Appo's limp hand, and I catch Alara and Appo's slender waist with my other arm. We are now completely suspended in midair, dangling precariously and dangerously above the burning, smoking debris of the ruined marble altar. The thick black smoke is rapidly becoming suffocating. My shoulder muscles are screaming in pure, unadulterated physical agony. End quote. Do not dare let go. End quote. Alara screams over the roaring, crackling flames below us. End quote. I highly recommend pulling us up immediately. End quote. Nyx adds, completely unhelpful despite her elite tactical training. I look down through the stinging smoke. The dark necromancer is standing directly beneath our dangling forms, a twisted, sinister smile playing on her pale lips. She raises her skeletal hands high, vile dark energy swirling rapidly around her bony fingers. The shattered pieces of the marble altar begin to violently reassemble themselves, forming 3 towering, grotesque stone gargoyles with glowing crimson eyes. They spread their heavy, jagged stone wings and look directly up at us. My cheap wyvern rope begins to fray ominously with a distinct, terrifying tearing sound. How many seconds do we have before we drop right into the waiting claws of an undead stone army? The distinct, agonizing sound of tearing wyvern sinew is currently the loudest noise in my entire world, completely drowning out the roaring flames below. I am holding the fraying rope tightly with my left hand, gripping Alara's waist with my right arm, while she desperately clings to the collar of a very confused, newly unbrainwashed assassin, who decides that building flying stone gargoyles inside a closed, wooden-roofed sanctuary is a practical architectural choice. It is fundamentally terrible interior design. The 3 animated stone monstrosities flap their heavy, jagged wings, ascending rapidly toward our dangling bodies. Their crimson eyes glow with pure, concentrated malice. The dark necromancer below is laughing loudly, a shrill, theatrical cackle that severely grates on my nerves. I saved her from a cursed, freezing crypt 2 years ago. I even baked her a birthday cake out of edible cave mushrooms. This is an incredibly poor return on my emotional investment. End quote. Alara, Nyx, brace yourselves immediately. End quote. I shout loudly, ignoring the blinding black smoke currently filling my lungs. End quote. Brace for what exactly? End quote. Alara screams back, her pointy ears twitching violently in pure panic. End quote. We are hanging precariously over a fiery pit of absolute doom. End quote. I do not bother explaining basic pendulum physics to an archer. I aggressively kick my heavy steel boots against the burning central pillar, using my remaining leg strength to force our combined weight into a wide, terrifying swing. The rope groans loudly, threatening to snap completely under the sudden dynamic load. We arc swiftly through the suffocating black smoke, narrowly avoiding the snapping stone jaws of the first rising gargoyle. Its massive teeth click shut right where my boots were a fraction of a second ago. My target is the high marble balcony overlooking the eastern wing of the sanctuary, currently shrouded in thick darkness. As we reach the absolute apex of our wild swing, the cheap wyvern sinew finally gives up. It snaps with a sharp, terrifying crack, launching us violently through the air like discarded cloth ragdolls. We crash heavily onto the cold marble floor of the balcony. My right shoulder absorbs the absolute brunt of the harsh impact, sending a sharp, agonizing jolt of pure pain directly down my spine. End quote. I strongly dislike your reckless escape methods. End quote. Nyx groaned softly, untangling her lithe limbs from Ilara and Appo's heavy green cloak. Before I can offer a sarcastic apology, a massive stone claw smashes violently into the ornate stone railing of the balcony, completely obliterating the ancient masonry. The largest of the three gargoyles pulls its heavy, grotesque body over the ledge, its jaw unhinging unnaturally. A sickly, green necrotic flame begins to gather in the back of its rocky throat. Are you kidding me? They breathe magical fire too? Is standard physical mauling not sufficient for Imperial death squads anymore? I have no magical sword, no health potions, and my grappling hook is currently burning in the fire far below. I frantically checked my dusty inventory pouch. 2 standard smoke bombs. That is literally my entire remaining arsenal. Throwing a simple smoke bomb at a magical creature that does not need to breathe oxygen is entirely pointless. Unless, of course, you do not use it for the actual smoke. I pull the rusty metal pin on the explosive device. I do not throw it at the gargoyle. I sprint directly toward the terrifying stone beast. End quote. Are you actively trying to die again? End quote. Ilara yells furiously, struggling to stand on her severely bruised legs. I dive aggressively under the gargoyle and Appo's sweeping stone wing, thrusting my arm forcefully upward. I forcefully jam the sputtering smoke bomb deep into the creature and Appo's unhinged mouth, right into the center of the gathering necrotic green flame. The intense, concentrated heat of the magical fire instantly ignites the highly volatile chemical powder packed inside the bomb. The resulting explosion is spectacularly messy. The gargoyle and Appo's heavy stone head detonates outward in a deafening shower of sharp rock shrapnel and bright green sparks. The headless, animated corpse stumbles backward blindly, crashing over the broken railing and plummeting into the fiery abyss below to join its necromancer master. End quote. 1 neutralized, 2 rapidly approaching. End quote. Nyx states monotonously, pointing toward the crumbling edge of the balcony where the remaining 2 gargoyles are currently pulling themselves up. End quote. Run into the eastern corridor immediately. End quote. I command, grabbing both women by their armored shoulders and shoving them forcefully toward the heavy oak doors leading deeper into the sanctuary. We sprint blindly down the dark, narrow stone hallway. The heavy, thudding footsteps of the remaining gargoyles echo loudly behind us, but stone is inherently slower than panicked flesh. We turn a sharp corner, skidding dangerously on the polished floor, and suddenly crash right into a solid, impenetrable wall of thick gray fur and rippling muscle. I blink rapidly, trying to clear the thick dust from my stinging eyes. It is not a wall. It is a terrifying dire wolf the size of a fully grown royal carriage. The beast growls, a low, terrifying rumble that literally shakes the loose dust from the vaulted ceiling. Standing directly behind the massive animal is Lyra, the wild beast tamer. Her usually vibrant, sun-kissed face is entirely blank, dominated by that sickening, pulsating purple imperial crest firmly attached to her forehead. End quote. Intruders detected in Sector 4, end quote. Lyra announces loudly, her voice entirely devoid of any natural warmth. End quote. The Emperor demands your immediate obliteration. End quote. Just perfectly fantastic. I successfully survived the fire mage, escaped the shadowy assassin, outmaneuvered the dark necromancer, and now I am completely trapped in a confined space with a giant, hungry magical wolf. To make matters exponentially worse, a soft, golden light suddenly illuminates the corridor behind Lyra. The serene holy cleric steps gracefully into view, her hands clasped together in pious prayer. She wears the exact same glowing mind control the beast and Apos' muscles visibly bulge, expanding its physical size by at least 30%. Its natural claws elongate into razor-sharp, glowing silver blades. Why do my former comrades have such phenomenal team synergy when trying to murder me? When we were actively exploring the dangerous abyssal labyrinth together, it took me 3 entire weeks just to convince the cleric to heal the beast tamer and Apos' injured pets. Now they are coordinating advanced buff spells like seasoned imperial gladiators. End quote. We need to remove those disgusting metal parasites from their heads immediately. End quote. Alara whispers frantically, pressing her back against the cold stone wall. End quote. Use that foul-smelling healing potion again. End quote. End quote. I used the absolute last drop of it on Nyx. End quote. I hiss back, watching the gigantic, magically enhanced wolf bare its glowing fangs. End quote. I currently have exactly 1 smoke bomb, a piece of dirty lint, and severe back pain. Do you have any brilliant tactical ideas? End quote. End quote. I am an unarmed assassin, she is a bowless archer, and you are a swordless swordsman. End quote. Nyx observes calmly. End quote. Statistically, we have a 0% chance of surviving the next 30 seconds. End quote. The giant dire wolf lunges forward with terrifying, unnatural speed, its massive jaws snapping precisely where my head currently resides. I drop to my knees instantly, feeling the fierce wind of its passing completely mess up my already ruined hair. The sheer physical force of the beast and Apos' aggressive charge shatters the stone wall behind us, showering the tight corridor with heavy debris. Lyra violently cracks her glowing magical whip, sending a crackling arc of violent purple lightning straight toward Alara. We cannot possibly fight a magically buffed dire wolf in a narrow hallway. We cannot safely cure the beast tamer without a rapid cellular accelerant. I urgently need to physically extract that mechanical bug from her forehead without crushing her delicate skull in the process. I desperately scan the surrounding chaotic environment. The heavy oak doors, the shattered stone wall, the cleric and Apos' glowing holy aura. The cleric. She is constantly channeling pure, concentrated life energy to sustain the wolf and Apos' massive physical buff. Life energy radically accelerates cellular growth. If I can somehow force the brainwashed cleric to channel her massive holy healing spell directly into Lyra and Apos' forehead, the biological feedback loop might aggressively force the mechanical parasite to detach entirely, just like my potion did. Is this an insanely dangerous gamble that relies heavily on manipulating an enemy and Apos' spell trajectory while simultaneously dodging a giant, murderous dog? Yes. Will I likely get violently electrocuted by a magical whip in the process? Probably. End quote. Nyx, Alara, distract the giant dog. End quote. I yell loudly, completely abandoning my secure position behind the stone rubble. End quote. With what exactly? Our charming personalities. End quote. Alara screams furiously, barely dodging another massive swipe from the glowing wolf. End quote. Just keep its sharp teeth away from your vital organs. End quote. I shout back, sprinting aggressively straight toward the beast tamer. Lyra and Apos' dead eyes lock onto me instantly. She raises her crackling lightning whip, absolutely ready to split my torso in half. The cleric behind her raises her pale hands, gathering a massive, swirling sphere of blinding holy energy to strike me down. Everything is perfectly, terribly aligned. The air in the corridor crackles with immense, suffocating magical pressure. The cleric and Apos' spell illuminates the dark hallway with a blinding, golden radiance that burns my retinas. Lyra's whip snaps forward, the sheer sound breaking the sound barrier with a deafening crack. I can smell the distinct, pungent odor of ozone and burning dust. If I miscalculate my physical trajectory by even a single millimeter, I will be simultaneously electrocuted, crushed, and vaporized. Who willingly runs directly toward two devastating, high-tier magical attacks without a weapon or a shield? Only a man who has entirely given up on logical self-preservation. I brace my aching body for the inevitable brutal impact, reaching my empty hands forward toward the beast tamer and Appo's face. Will this totally suicidal maneuver actually save her, or am I just delivering myself perfectly wrapped to the Emperor and Appo's executioners? The cleric and Appo's holy spell is currently searing my retinas. If I blink, I die. Who willingly plays a game of high-stakes chicken with a lightning whip and concentrated divine wrath? Only a man with strictly fatal survival options. I slide aggressively on the dusty stone floor. The giant dire wolf's massive jaws snap shut precisely where my head was a microsecond earlier. Lyra's crackling purple whip snaps forward with a deafening crack. I violently twist my torso directly into its path. Did I calculate the exact voltage of an enchanted weapon? No. I merely hoped my worn rubber-soled boots would prevent me from becoming a human lightning rod. The electrified tip wraps tightly around my left forearm. The sheer pain is instantaneous. My muscles seize, but the brutal momentum of my slide carries me forward. I yank the trapped whip with every ounce of my remaining physical strength, pulling Lyra violently off her feet and directly into my chest. We crash heavily onto the shattered stone floor just as the cleric unleashes her massive sphere of concentrated divine energy. She was aiming directly for my center of mass. Instead, because I am currently using her brainwashed ally as a makeshift biological shield, the blinding holy blast strikes Lyra directly in the forehead. Is it unethical to use a former comrade as a physical barrier against a magical attack? Perhaps. But I consider it an aggressive medical intervention. The influx of pure life energy forcefully collides with the necrotic parasite attached to Lyra and Appo's skin. The mechanical abomination cannot process the overwhelming positive mana. It emits a horrific, high-pitched metallic screech that rattles my eardrums. The vile purple crest shatters, and the metallic insectoid legs detach violently in a spray of black fluid. I immediately crush the disgusting bug beneath my heavy steel boot. Without the parasite feeding her aggressive combat commands, Lyra goes completely limp in my arms. Almost instantly, the massive dire wolf behind us whimpers loudly. The glowing golden aura surrounding its body dies completely. The terrifying monster rapidly shrinks back down to the size of a standard timber wolf, cowering behind a broken pillar. End quote. 3 down. End quote. Alara coughs loudly, stepping out from behind a shattered pillar with Nyx close behind. End quote. That was objectively the stupidest tactical maneuver I have ever witnessed. End quote. End quote. It successfully worked. End quote. I reply through gritted teeth, unwrapping the crackling whip from my severely burned forearm. End quote. You should take notes for your future combat seminars. End quote. My moment of sarcastic triumph is violently interrupted. The serene holy cleric is no longer standing in a pious posture. Her glowing, parasite-controlled eyes lock directly onto me, and she looks absolutely livid. The gentle golden aura of healing magic surrounding her delicate body rapidly shifts into a blinding crimson light. Why do dedicated party healers always possess the most devastating attack spells? When we explored the Abyssal Labyrinth, she once vaporized an entire room of shadow fiends because one accidentally stepped on her staff. End quote. The Emperor and Appo's divine vessel has been violently corrupted. End quote. The cleric chants mechanically. End quote. Initiating immediate holy purgation protocol. End quote. She raises her pale hands. Dozens of glowing crimson magical circles rapidly appear on the stone floor beneath our feet. I know this Hyter spell. It is a targeted localized orbital strike made of pure divine wrath. End quote. Move immediately. End quote. I scream loudly, dragging Lyra's unconscious body toward the nearest intact archway. Blinding pillars of crimson light violently erupt from the floor, completely disintegrating everything they touch. Nyx uses her innate shadow step to blink safely across the corridor, while Alara dives gracefully behind a fallen marble statue. I barely manage to roll out of a glowing circle before a pillar of pure destruction obliterates the exact spot where we lay. I am entirely out of health potions, and my left arm is currently useless from severe electrical burns. I desperately need a powerful, contradictory elemental force to overload her specific parasite. The beast tamer and Appo's whip is still wrapped tightly around my wrist. It's magical, end quote. I and Appo's am an assassin, not a magician, end quote. Nyx shouts back from the shadows. End quote. But I and Appo's LL attempt something reckless, end quote. Nyx kicks a massive piece of shattered stone masonry high into the air, perfectly intercepting a beam of crimson light. The resulting explosion creates a massive flash of secondary light and a thick cloud of dust. The cleric momentarily loses her visual lock. I sprint through the thick, settling dust, my boots pounding heavily. The cleric turns her glowing eyes toward the movement, raising her hand. I forcefully rip the glowing magical battery core straight out of the whip and Appo's handle. The uncontained lightning energy arcs violently across my bare fingers, burning my skin, but I ignore the pain. I slam the crackling crystal core directly onto the center of the glowing purple crest on her forehead. A localized shockwave of blue and gold light forcefully throws me backward across the corridor. The cleric screams, a purely human sound of agony, as the mechanical parasite forcefully ejects itself from her skull. The metallic bug hits the floor, smoking, before Alara aggressively pins it with a steel dagger. The crimson magical circles instantly vanish. 4 former comrades saved. 40 heavily armed, highly dangerous women remaining. Before I can attempt to explain the chaotic events, the entire sanctuary begins to violently tremble. The ancient stone walls, the massive pillars, and the vaulted ceilings literally begin to dissolve into thin air, flaking away like burnt paper. The dark environment is rapidly replaced by blinding, harsh sunlight and the deafening roar of a massive crowd. We are no longer inside a ruined sanctuary. The entire dungeon was a highly elaborate magical illusion. We are currently standing in the center of the Imperial Colosseum, surrounded by thousands of cheering citizens. High above us is the Holy Emperor himself. End quote. Congratulations on passing the preliminary entertainment round, traitor, end quote. The Emperor and Appo's magically amplified voice booms across the vast arena. End quote. Now, release the Royal Knight Vanguard, end quote. The massive iron gates at the far end of the sandy arena slowly grind open. A dozen heavily armored women, wielding massive broadswords and tower shields, step out into the blinding sunlight. They are my former Vanguard squad, and their eyes glow with the exact same vow purple crest. I am severely injured, entirely out of magical tricks, and staring down a dozen unstoppable juggernauts in broad daylight. How exactly am I supposed to outsmart an entire brainwashed army when the entire empire is actively watching me die? How exactly am I supposed to outsmart an entire brainwashed army when the entire empire is actively watching me die? The blinding midday sun beats down on my severely bruised shoulders, baking the bloody sand beneath my worn boots. 80,000 imperial citizens are screaming enthusiastically for my immediate decapitation. I have always heavily disliked public speaking, but public execution is definitively much worse. End quote. So, what is the Grand Master plan this time? End quote. Alara asks loudly, standing entirely empty-handed beside me. End quote. Because I left my spare bow in the other pants, and we are currently facing a walking wall of impenetrable imperial steel. End quote. I glance cautiously at the 12 advancing Vanguard Knights. They are moving in a flawless, highly synchronized phalanx formation. Their massive platinum tower shields interlock perfectly, creating an unstoppable metallic bulldozer that violently grinds the sand beneath it. Their heavy, enchanted broadswords rest menacingly over the top of the shield wall. These are the exact same women I spent 4 grueling months training in the deep, monster-infested caverns of Moria-Dun. I taught them how to form that specific, impenetrable defense. Did I do too good of a job? Absolutely. Why do my exceptional leadership skills always come back to violently bite me in the rear? If I throw a rock, it will simply bounce off their impenetrable shields. If I try to safely negotiate, they will expertly dice me into small, bloody cubes. End quote. Nyx, do you happen to have any hidden daggers cleverly concealed in your boots? End quote. I asked desperately, massaging my severely burned left arm. End quote. I am a master assassin, not a traveling street merchant, end quote, Nyx replies coolly, crossing her slender arms. End quote. I dropped my only valuable weapons into a fiery abyss, per your direct, highly questionable instructions. I can aggressively glare at them if you genuinely think it will help. End quote. End quote. It will not help, end quote, I say flatly. The ground physically shakes with every heavy, synchronized step the vanguard takes. The bloodthirsty crowd roars in sheer approval. High above the arena floor, safely seated in the opulent royal box, the Holy Emperor swirls a glass of red wine, watching us closely like amusing insects trapped in a fragile glass jar. I desperately need a reliable weapon. Even a discarded rusty dagger would be a miraculous blessing right now. I aggressively drop to my knees and frantically dig my bare hands into the hot, gritty arena sand. Gladiators die here every single week. Surely, someone left a sharp blade behind. My bleeding fingers rapidly brush against cold, hard metal. Yes. I pull it out triumphantly. It is a bent, heavily rusted tin spoon. Perhaps it was used to eat an aggressive bowl of imperial oatmeal? What kind of gladiator fights a glorious death match with a soup spoon? A very dead one, apparently. End quote. They are roughly 40 yards away and violently accelerating. End quote. Alara notes unhelpfully, pointing directly at the 12 tons of incoming murderous steel. End quote. I am highly aware of their immediate proximity. End quote. I shout, throwing the useless spoon aside in pure frustration. The vanguard suddenly stops. Their heavy boots stomp the sand in perfect unison, creating a deafening, thunderous crack. From the direct center of the imposing formation, Commander Seraphina steps forward. She is a towering, muscular woman with arms that could easily crush a granite boulder. Her eyes currently radiate that same sickly, pulsating purple light from the mechanical imperial parasite embedded firmly under her helmet. End quote. By the Emperor and Apos' divine decree, you shall be aggressively ground into dust. End quote. Seraphina booms mechanically, raising her massive broadsword high above her helmet. End quote. Vanguard, initiate the sweeping blade execution protocol. End quote. The 12 women violently raise their massive swords, their sharp blades suddenly igniting with blinding, white-hot magical energy. They are clearly preparing to release a massive, horizontal wave of concentrated kinetic force that will effectively slice the entire sandy arena in half. We cannot possibly block it. We cannot physically outrun it. I look frantically around the vast, circular coliseum. The only thing standing between the deadly arena floor and the safely cheering spectators is a massive, shimmering, translucent magical barrier. It hums loudly with immense, concentrated imperial mana, specifically designed to protect the rich citizens from stray gladiator spells. Are we about to forcefully play the most dangerous game of magical billiards in human history? Yes. Yes, we are. End quote. Everyone, get directly behind me immediately. End quote. I command loudly, sprinting straight toward the outer edge of the sandy arena, running perfectly parallel to the massive magical barrier. Alara and Nyx do not hesitate for a second. They follow closely behind, aggressively dragging the slowly waking holy cleric along with them. Seraphina swings her massive, glowing sword downward, and the other 11 heavy knights mirror her violent movement perfectly. A colossal, crescent-shaped wave of white-hot magical energy violently erupts from their weapons, tearing a deep trench through the sand and hurtling directly toward our fragile bodies. The sheer ambient heat is aggressively singeing the hairs on the back of my neck. I wait patiently until the absolute last millisecond. End quote. Hit the dirt right now. End quote. I yell loudly, diving face first into the rough, unforgiving sand. My bruised ribs scream in agonizing protest as I forcefully contort my body into the dirt. The massive wave of destructive energy passes mere inches above my aching back. It does not hit our bodies. Instead, it violently crashes directly into the Colosseum and Apos' shimmering, protective magical barrier. The resulting impact is absolutely deafening. The sheer, unadulterated force of 12 elite vanguard knights attacking a stationary, high-tier defensive ward creates a spectacular, highly unstable, Localized magical feedback loop. The invisible barrier violently bends outward, groaning terrifyingly under the immense magical pressure, before violently snapping back into place. The chaotic anti-magic instantly clashes violently with the dark, highly ordered mana of their mind control parasites. Did I mathematically calculate the exact physics of this intense magical rebound? Not even slightly. I merely hoped the ensuing chaos would thoroughly fry their mechanical bugs. The 12 heavy knights dropped their massive tower shields simultaneously, frantically clutching their armored helmets. Horrific, high-pitched metallic shrieks rapidly echo across the bloody sand as a dozen royal neuroleeches violently short-circuit all at once. The glowing purple crests on their foreheads aggressively shatter with distinct, sharp popping sounds. The heavy platinum helmets fly off entirely, revealing a dozen highly confused, incredibly dizzy women. Some of them immediately vomit onto the sand, completely disoriented by the sudden, violent return of their stolen memories. They rapidly collapse onto the arena floor in a massive, tangled pile of clanking armor and groaning limbs. End quote. That actually successfully worked, end quote. Alara stammers quietly, rapidly wiping thick sand from her pale face. End quote. You just aggressively cured 12 elite imperial guards with a single, highly reckless dodge. End quote. End quote. I am incredibly efficient when my fragile life is in imminent danger. End quote. I reply tiredly, slowly standing up and aggressively dusting off my ruined clothes. 16 women saved. 28 heavily armed assassins to go. My severely bruised body is screaming in pure, concentrated agony, but I allow myself a brief, fleeting moment of sarcastic triumph. I look directly up at the high royal box, confidently offering the Holy Emperor a highly sarcastic, exaggerated bow. The massive crowd of 80,000 spectators falls entirely silent. The enthusiastic cheering stops abruptly. They just witnessed their invincible, brainwashed imperial champions get utterly humiliated by an unarmed man covered in dirt. The Emperor is no longer casually swirling his expensive wine. He stands up slowly, his pale face twisted into a grotesque mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He does not look like a serene holy ruler right now. He looks exactly like a petulant child who just had his favorite wooden toy permanently broken. End quote. You genuinely dare mock the divine authority of the Empire? End quote. The Emperor and Apos' magically amplified voice thunders loudly, violently vibrating the very marrow inside my tired bones. End quote. You arrogant fool. I do not need brainwashed champions to safely eradicate a single pest. End quote. The Emperor aggressively raises his manicured hands, a dark, violently pulsing orb of forbidden black mana forming rapidly between his palms. He is not aiming the spell directly at me. He is aiming it at the arena itself. End quote. What exactly is he doing up there? End quote. Nyx asks quickly, her sharp eyes narrowing in sudden, genuine concern. End quote. He cannot attack us directly with massive spells without forcefully dropping the protective barrier for the audience. End quote. End quote. He does not care about the audience. End quote. I say calmly, a cold, terrifying dread violently pooling in my empty stomach. The entire Colosseum violently shudders. Deep beneath the sandy floor, an ancient, terrifying magical array aggressively activates. Glowing, blood-red runic lines rapidly spread across the entire circular arena, climbing swiftly up the stone walls and encircling the densely packed spectator stands. The protective magical barrier completely vanishes, instantly replaced by a massive, inescapable dome of concentrated, lethal gravity magic. The audience screams in sheer, unadulterated terror as they suddenly realize they are now permanently locked inside the execution chamber with us. The Emperor is actively willing to sacrifice 80,000 of his own loyal citizens just to ensure my permanent, absolute death. End quote. Grand Annihilation Array, maximum output. End quote. The Emperor sneers cruelly from his safe balcony. The gravity within the Colosseum immediately increases tenfold. Alara gasps loudly, forced aggressively to her knees by the sheer, crushing invisible weight. Nyx collapses heavily onto the sand, entirely unable to lift her head. The newly cured Vanguard Knights, already severely exhausted, are pinned completely flat against the ground by their incredibly heavy platinum armor. My own bones creak ominously. It physically feels as if a massive, invisible stone gargoyle is actively sitting on my weak shoulders. My knees buckle violently under the terrifying, relentless pressure. I cannot breathe properly. I cannot stand up. The blood is forcefully pooling in my heavy feet, and my vision is rapidly turning dark at the jagged edges. I am effectively paralyzed, entirely helpless beneath an invisible, crushing mountain. High above, the Emperor casually steps to the edge of his balcony, slowly drawing a sleek, glowing golden crossbow. He aims the deadly, armor-piercing weapon directly at my exposed, immobilized chest. How am I supposed to dodge a royal executioner and Appo's magical bolt when I cannot even lift my own fingers? I am currently flattened against the blood-stained sand of the Imperial Colosseum, experiencing roughly 10 times normal gravity. My ribs are playing a dangerous game of and Appo's, which one snaps first. And Appo's. High in the royal box, the Holy Emperor casually pulls the trigger of his golden, armor-piercing crossbow. Does my life flash before my eyes? No, just an overwhelming regret over the bowl of cheap, watery porridge I hastily ate for breakfast. I should have ordered the extra bacon. The glowing metallic bolt streaks downward with terrifying speed, aimed directly at my exposed heart. But the Emperor, for all his supposed divine wisdom and boundless arrogance, clearly skipped basic magical physics at the Royal Academy. When a high-velocity projectile enters a localized field of exponentially increased gravity, its trajectory does not remain perfectly straight. It plummets aggressively. The bolt drops violently halfway through its flight path, completely missing my chest by an entire foot. Instead, it buries itself deep into the arena's sand, directly striking one of the glowing red runic nodes powering the Grand Annihilation Array. He just shot his own billion gold execution device. Excellent marksmanship, Your Majesty. The crimson runes violently flicker, emitting a terrifying, high-pitched whine, before detonating in a massive shockwave of localized spatial distortion. The crushing invisible weight vanishes instantly. I gasp loudly, sucking in a massive lungful of dusty, metallic-tasting air. End quote. Did he just accidentally save our lives with his own lethal weapon? End quote. Nyx asks quietly, slowly peeling her pale face off the sandy floor. End quote. Never interrupt an arrogant enemy while he is making a catastrophic mathematical error. End quote. I reply, rubbing my severely bruised neck. The Emperor furiously throws his ruined golden crossbow over the marble balcony. He does not take public humiliation well. End quote. Release the rest of them immediately. End quote. He screams, his magically amplified voice cracking with pure, unadulterated madness. End quote. Release every single one of my beloved weapons. End quote. The 4 heavy iron gates surrounding the circular arena grind open simultaneously. 28 heavily armed, highly lethal women march aggressively onto the blood-soaked sand. The elite royal mages, the silent shadow weavers, the heavily armored griffin riders. All of them sport that sickening, pulsating purple crest on their pale foreheads. Why do evil emperors always have endless backup armies? Is it a mandatory requirement for maintaining a tyrannical regime? We are 16 severely exhausted survivors facing 28 fresh, highly coordinated imperial assassins. The newly freed vanguard knights stagger to their feet, retrieving their massive platinum tower shields from the dirt. End quote. Commander Seraphina, end quote. I call out, walking slowly toward the towering, muscular woman. End quote. Are you currently experiencing any lingering desires to brutally murder me? End quote. End quote. My head fiercely throbs, and my pride is severely wounded. End quote. Seraphina groans loudly, adjusting her heavily dented breastplate. End quote. But I currently prefer to slice the Holy Emperor into very thin ribbons for putting a mechanical bug inside my skull. End quote. End quote. Excellent. We urgently need a massive, localized magical pulse to aggressively short-circuit 28 neuroleeches at once. End quote. I look at the serene holy cleric and the beast tamer. End quote. We are going to forcefully combine holy magic, raw lightning, and a highly conductive platinum shield wall." End quote. I am basically inventing a magical microwave, and 28 highly dangerous women are the frozen burrito. They launch a terrifying, synchronized magical assault. Searing fireballs, jagged ice lances, and swirling shadow blades rain down violently upon our shield wall. The vanguard knights groan loudly under the immense, concentrated magical pressure, their armored boots sliding backward in the dirt. End quote. Cleric, channel all your remaining holy energy directly into the metal shields. End quote. I shout desperately over the deafening explosions of incoming spells. End quote. My mana reserves are dangerously low. End quote. The cleric yells back, pressing her pale, trembling hands against Seraphina and Apos' cold back. She floods the metallic barrier with blinding, pure golden light. The heavy shields hum violently, vibrating like huge tuning forks. End quote. Lyra, crack the lightning core against the metal. Do it right now, end quote, I command. Is intentionally striking a highly energized, defensive magical barrier with raw, uncontained lightning fundamentally suicidal? Probably, but I am entirely out of safer tactical options. The beast tamer forcefully slams the crackling, exposed battery core of her broken whip directly into the center of Commander Seraphina and Apos' glowing shield. The resulting chemical and magical reaction is utterly apocalyptic. A massive, blinding dome of pure electro-holy energy erupts violently outward from our defensive circle. The invisible shockwave sweeps swiftly across the entire Colosseum floor, passing aggressively through the 28 advancing assassins. The chaotic, clashing magic instantly seeks out the highly ordered dark mana of the mind control seals. 28 horrific, high-pitched metallic shrieks echo simultaneously across the arena. The royal neuroleeches violently short-circuit, exploding in tiny showers of black fluid and silver sparks. The remaining women drop their deadly weapons, collapsing heavily onto the sand as their stolen memories violently return. I fall aggressively to my knees, my breath coming in ragged, painful gasps. My left arm is entirely numb, and my head feels like it was recently used as a heavy imperial marching drum. 44 elite warriors successfully rescued from deep psychological brainwashing. I should be feeling an immense, heroic sense of accomplishment. Instead, I am just desperately calculating if there is a comfortable local tavern nearby that serves excessively large pints of cold ale. My peaceful, quiet retirement is so incredibly close I can practically taste the cheap, bitter foam. End quote. We did it, end quote. Alara breathes heavily, leaning against my sore shoulder. End quote. You actually saved all 44 of us. We can finally go home. End quote. End quote. I strongly suggest you hold your premature celebration. End quote. Nyx states monotonously, pointing her slender finger directly toward the opulent royal box high above. Did you honestly think a generic, megalomaniacal tyrant would just gracefully accept defeat and formally surrender? The Emperor is not fleeing the scene. He is laughing. It is a wet, guttural, utterly horrific sound that violently shakes the remaining glass in the stadium. He raises his manicured hands high toward the sunny sky. The shattered, smoking remains of the 44 mechanical parasites on the arena floor suddenly begin to emit a thick, vile black smoke. The dark mana rapidly funnels upward, swirling into a massive, suffocating vortex of forbidden imperial energy. End quote. Fools! The leeches were merely collecting your vast combat data. End quote. The Emperor screams triumphantly. His expensive white silk robes tear apart violently as his spine aggressively elongates. Extra, heavily muscled limbs forcefully burst from his ribcage in a horrifying shower of royal blood. His pale face stretches into a grotesque, multi-eyed monstrosity radiating pure, suffocating dark energy. He forcefully leaps from the high balcony, crashing heavily onto the arena floor and creating a massive, dusty crater in the sand. We are currently facing a towering, mutated god of destruction, and my only remaining tactical tool is a scorched piece of wyvern string. How exactly do 44 exhausted women and one very tired man defeat an immortal abomination without a single working weapon? How exactly do 44 exhausted women and one very tired man defeat an immortal abomination without a single working weapon? You do not. You aggressively cheat the fundamental laws of magical physics. The mutated emperor lets out a deafening roar, his multiple eyes glowing with concentrated, vile black mana. He swings a massive shadow limb, violently smashing a marble pillar into fine dust. The sheer shockwave throws me backward onto the bloody sand. I am currently operating on 2 hours of sleep, severe dehydration, and pure unfiltered spite. End quote. Disperse immediately. End quote. I command loudly, scrambling to my aching feet. End quote. Do not let him hit you with that dark energy. End quote. The 44 women scatter like startled cats, their heavy armor clanking loudly against the arena floor. The Emperor does not care about them. His multiple glowing eyes lock directly onto my bruised face. He blames me entirely for ruining his grand, tyrannical schemes. He charges forward, his massive feet violently shaking the very foundations of the Colosseum. How does a man with a burned arm and a useless piece of string kill a newly ascended god of destruction? I desperately scan the ruined sandy arena. My tired eyes land directly on the glowing, shattered runic node of the Grand Annihilation Array that the Emperor accidentally destroyed earlier. It is currently sparking with highly unstable spatial magic. The Emperor absorbed the dark mana from 44 short-circuited parasites. He is essentially a massive, highly unstable, actively leaking magical battery. If I can forcefully connect his immense dark energy directly to the malfunctioning spatial array, the resulting magical vacuum should violently tear him apart from the inside out. End quote. Nix, I need to get to that broken runic node right now. End quote. I shout loudly, pointing directly at the sparking crater in the sand. End quote. You want to run directly toward the violently unstable spatial anomaly while a giant monster tries to step on us? End quote. Nix asks quickly, appearing seamlessly from my shadow. End quote. Your tactical plans are consistently terrible. End quote. End quote. Do you have a significantly better idea? End quote. I ask flatly. End quote. I will carry you. End quote. She sighs loudly, grabbing my uninjured shoulder. We sprint aggressively across the sandy floor, narrowly dodging massive, sweeping blasts of pure black mana. The Emperor realizes my destination. He lets out another horrific roar, leaping high into the sunny sky. His massive, shadowy form entirely blots out the sun. He is going to crush the runic node, and us, with his sheer physical mass. End quote. Seraphina, I need a massive distraction. End quote. I yell loudly. The towering Vanguard commander does not hesitate for a single second. She picks up her heavy platinum tower shield and violently hurls it like a massive metallic disc directly at the falling Emperor. The heavy shield strikes him squarely in one of his glowing, mutated eyes. He screeches loudly, twisting his massive body in midair. He crashes heavily into the sand just 10 feet away from us, sending a massive wave of dirt and debris over our heads. Nix and I slide aggressively to a halt right next to the violently sparking runic node. The magical pressure here is absolutely suffocating. End quote. Alara, end quote. I scream loudly over the deafening roar of the enraged Emperor. End quote. I need you to shoot a physical conduit directly into the center of this magical node. Use a broken broadsword. End quote. Did I mention I have absolutely zero formal training in high-tier runic engineering? I am purely guessing that shoving a piece of conductive metal into a spatial rift will create a targeted vacuum. The Emperor recovers rapidly. He looms massively over me, his grotesque face twisting into a hideous, victorious sneer. End quote. You are thoroughly out of tricks, pathetic rat. End quote. The Emperor and Apos, distorted, overlapping voices echo loudly. He violently reaches out with a massive, clawed shadow hand and grabs my entire torso. The immense, crushing pressure instantly forces the remaining air out of my burning lungs. He lifts me high into the air, holding me directly over his gaping, monstrous jaw. Is being slowly crushed to death by a mutated tyrant the worst way to die? No, but it is certainly in the top 3. End quote. You talk entirely too much. End quote. I gasped painfully, wrapping my right hand tightly around the scorched piece of wyvern string I still desperately hold. I forcefully tied the other end around his thick, shadowy thumb. It does not hurt him, but it creates a physical, organic connection. They do not ask questions. 44 elite warriors point their tired hands, their broken weapons, and their glowing staffs directly at the platinum blade. A massive, combined beam of fire, holy light, lightning, and pure kinetic energy forcefully strikes the metal conduit. The sudden, catastrophic influx of 44 different magical signatures violently overloads the broken spatial node. The runic array needs a massive ground to safely discharge this apocalyptic energy. Because I tied the conductive wyvern string directly to the Emperor and Appo's hand, and I am currently physically touching him, he immediately becomes the path of least magical resistance. Is acting as a human lightning rod for a massive spatial anomaly a pleasant physical experience? Absolutely not. Every single nerve in my tired body instantly catches fire. A blinding, deafening vortex of pure, white-hot spatial magic erupts violently from the runic node, traveling straight up the cheap wyvern string, flowing aggressively through my aching body, and forcefully injecting itself directly into the Emperor and Appo's dark core. The mutated tyrant freezes entirely in place. His multiple glowing eyes widen in pure, unadulterated cosmic terror. He cannot possibly contain the sheer, chaotic spatial pressure. End quote. No! I am the absolute divine ruler, end quote. He shrieks frantically, his massive shadow limbs rapidly dissolving into fine white ash. End quote. You are just an overgrown, magical battery, end quote. I whisper tiredly. End quote. And you just violently short-circuited. End quote. The Emperor forcefully drops me. I plummet heavily into the soft sand, entirely unable to move my paralyzed limbs. Above me, the spatial rift violently tears the Emperor apart. He does not explode, he simply implodes. His massive form is aggressively sucked directly into a localized, pinpoint black hole. With a final, deafening crack that completely shatters every remaining stone bench in the Colosseum, the spatial rift violently collapses in on itself. The dark god is entirely gone. He is completely erased from existence. The blinding midday sun suddenly feels wonderfully warm against my battered skin. I slowly roll over onto my severely sore back, staring blankly up at the clear blue sky. My left arm is completely numb, my ribs are definitely broken, and my hair is actively smoking. I successfully saved 44 elite women, defeated a mutated tyrant, and miraculously survived a rigged death game. I can finally retire to a small, quiet tavern and aggressively avoid all physical labor forever. End quote. Sir? End quote. A soft, reverent voice breaks my beautiful, peaceful silence. I painfully tilt my heavy head. Ilara, Nyx, Seraphina, Lyra, the holy cleric, and 39 other heavily armed, highly dangerous women are currently standing in a massive, perfect circle completely surrounding me. They are no longer covered in dark, vile imperial magic. Their eyes are entirely clear. Slowly, in absolute, terrifyingly synchronized unison, all 44 elite imperial warriors drop gracefully to one knee. They aggressively bow their heads toward me. End quote. We owe you our very lives and our eternal, unbreakable loyalty. End quote. Commander Seraphina booms loudly, her voice echoing across the empty arena. End quote. You are our supreme savior. We will proudly follow you to the very ends of the earth. We will build a brand new, glorious empire in your revered name. End quote. I stare blankly at the massive, kneeling army of elite assassins, heavy knights, and destructive mages. They are staring at me with pure, unadulterated fanatical devotion. They do not want to go home. They want to aggressively serve me forever. My peaceful, quiet retirement just violently evaporated into thin air. I do not want an empire. I just desperately want a bowl of hot soup and a very soft bed. Why does the universe continually and aggressively punish basic competence with a lifetime of massive, unwanted leadership responsibilities? I close my tired, bruised eyes, silently praying for a massive rock to fall from the sky and completely crush me. But the sky remains beautifully, mockingly clear. End quote. I severely hate my ridiculous life. End quote. I mutter weakly, forcefully passing out on the warm, bloody sand. Will I ever finally get my quiet, peaceful retirement, or am I now the permanent, highly reluctant babysitter of an entire fanatical imperial death squad?